All right, so let's move on to Division 2 a little bit. Um, this one I label Polemarchus's inheritance, so-called inheritance, helping friends and hurting enemies. That's justice, right? No, as it turns out. Um, all right, 331d. Well then, I hand down the argument to you, says Cephalus to his son Polemarchus, for it is already time for me to look after my sacrifices. Um, Cephalus retires to his religious duties and to go to sleep, right? This is the passing of the old ways, of the old generation, is symbolized here, um, and by traditional morality, or traditional foundation of morality. And then, am I not the heir of what belongs to you, said Polemarchus, his son. Certainly, Cephalus says, and laughed. And with that he went away. Another point is that Polemarchus and the younger generation have inherited social responsibility. It's up to them now, out of their own resources, their own wits, not the resources of tradition, which Cephalus could fall back on, in order to give an account of the good life and society, etc. Note that Socrates is pretty gentle with Cephalus as far as it goes. He's a little rude here and there, but he lets him go. He lets him off without giving him too much of a fight. He respects Cephalus, but there's a deep criticism here as well. In the conversation that follows, for the rest of the book really, we get a good picture of Socrates' MO, right? Mode of operation. Given a particular honest definition of justice, right? That is, ask someone for what you think justice is, and they give you their honest, what they really believe. Honest definition of justice, and it works for any X, so to speak. It doesn't just work for justice. Socrates challenges that proposed definition with questions to see if it stands up to contradiction. If the interlocutor is honestly seeking the truth, such as Polemarchus is, and even more so Adeimantus and Glaucon, if they're really honestly seeking the truth and not just trying to win the argument, such as Thrasymachus, as we'll see, tries to do, that is, if they're really philosophical, the initial definition may need to be changed, or perhaps given up completely. After trying to save the idea of justice by save the idea that justice is helping friends and harming enemies, Socrates says to Polemarchus, "We shall do battle then as partners, you and I." Socrates and Polemarchus are both on the side of truth, so to speak. Even though they may have some initial disagreement that gets their conversation off the ground, they're both on the same side when it comes to the truth. They both really want to know what justice is. Although they might be taking different sides in the argument, this is an important lesson of the Republic. Contrast this situation with you can't even call it a dialogue, with Thrasymachus. The discussion with Polemarchus may seem tedious, and a lot of Socrates' discussion seems tedious, not just to you guys, but to his contemporaries as well. They might seem tedious, but the idea is that this is the only way to get to the truth of things through what is called dialectic, the honest back and forth questioning or inquiry into the nature, the essence of something. And in this case, we're looking for justice. What is justice, anyway? Well, start from where you are, from what you think it really is, given your best light right now, and see if it'll hold up to the good questions of Socrates, right? So, philosophers, even when they do battle on behalf of truth as partners. Okay, Polemarchus initially takes up his father's idea. Justice is speaking truth and giving back what one takes. But he gives this definition up pretty quickly since it doesn't fit the counterexample, giving back a gun, say, to your drunk friend. So he changes it. He means something different, really, he claims. So he tries to fix the definition. And this, again, is being honest. This is what I thought it was. It turns out not to work in every situation, so we need to fix the definition before we give it up, right? Friends, 332a, small typo, 332a. Friends owe it to friends to do some good and nothing bad. Which immediately, as Socrates points out, brings up the idea of what one owes in justice to one's enemies. It must be harm. So then justice starts to look like justice is harm to one's enemies, giving them what is fitted or owed, and doing good to one's friends, which is what is fitting or owed. Now, follow the next bit closely at 332c. Socrates seems to change the subject and to start talking about cooking and medicine and health and disease, etc. And this has annoyed people from his day to ours, right? Thrasymachus complains about this briefly. What's the relevance of this discussion here, though? He's drawing analogies. They're not always good ones, frankly, but he's making a larger point. There's an analogy Socrates is drawing between medicine, cooking, etc., and justice. How is this supposed to work? Or between the doctor, the cook, and the just man. The art of medicine gives what is owed and fitting to things. To what kinds of things? To medicine and to bodies. The art of cooking, blah, 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 to what things? Blah, blah, to seasonings and meats. The art that gives what to which things is called justice, right? And 332d, we have the art that gives benefits and harms to friends and enemies. And then, what happens to this definition? With respect to health and disease, who is the most able to do good to sick friends and bad to enemies? A doctor. With respect to the danger of the sea, who has the power over those who are sailing? A pilot. And what about the just man? In what action and with respect to what work is he most able to help friends and harm enemies? In making war and being an ally in battle. So far, so good. But here's the rub. If a doctor is useless to a man who is not sick, let's go back a bit. If a doctor is useless to a man who is not sick, and a pilot is useless to a man who is not sailing, then, by this analogy, justice would be worthless to someone during peacetime. And that seems crazy, doesn't it? But it does seem to follow from the argument so far. So if justice is useful during peacetime, the definition must be developed. If justice truly is useful during peacetime, which it seems that it is, the definition must be changed once again. So we get another inquiry into his usefulness during peacetime. And so on until Polemarchus gives up, essentially at 334b, and says, I no longer know what I did mean, Socrates. However, it's still my opinion that justice is helping friends and harming enemies. All right, so they start over. Sometimes we simply need a new beginning because we weren't getting anywhere. So what do you mean by friend? This is the way the discussion takes off now. Someone who seems to be good to an individual, or someone who really is good? What is a friend? Someone who seems to be good to you, or someone who really is good to you? But we often mistake those who seem to be friends when they're not. I mean, we clearly make these kinds of mistakes all the time, right? But that makes the good your enemy and the bad your friend, assuming the definition of friend is one who seems good and that you're wrong in some cases. And so on until Polemarchus cries uncle. The argument seems to be bad, he says, because it leads to crazy and contradictory conclusions. And that's really the upshot of all of this stage of argumentation, is showing that they're both trying to reach the truth through dialectic, and they keep having to start over because they can't repair the definitions that are proffered. There are problems in each case. Whether or not the arguments of Socrates are all that great is a little bit beside the point, right? So Socrates finally offers at 334d through e another definition of justice. I can find it. Yeah. Nope, that's not it. Another definition of justice at 334d through e is just to harm the unjust and help the just. Polemarchus accepts this provisionally. It seems to be better than the others so far. And Polemarchus wants to change the definition of friend and enemy from seems good to really is good, 334e. The man who seems the man who seems to be and is good is the friend. The man who both seems to be and is good is the friend. Anyhow, the argument can seem tedious, and it is, but they're technically getting somewhere. By the time we get to 336a, they have determined that whatever justice is, it's not just to harm anyone. This is real progress. Then they decide, importantly, at 336e, that it's not the authority of the speaker that matters, or the beauty of the words, but the truth that matters in their discussion, so that they are on the same side. As we've already quoted, we shall do battle as partners, you and I, Socrates says to Polemarchus. If someone asserts that Simonides or Bias or any other wise and blessed man has said it, we are on the same side. We shall do battle as partners against authority. And Polemarchus and Socrates are just about to take up another possible definition. You can see how this goes all the way deep into the night, right? As Polemarchus and Socrates are just about to take up another possible definition of justice, suddenly Thrasymachus, the sophist, lunges on the argument. And that's the next part.